Suzanne is involved in the Anthropocene Transition Project and will talk to us about new sustainable business models enabling transition to the Anthropocene.
Well, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Jack. That was a fantastic presentation. I'll try to remember some of those really...
It'll be on YouTube.
Fantastic. So I learned a huge amount from that, and I don't know how much more I've got to say, really. I think she sort of said it all. But, so I'm very pleased to be here. Of course, design is absolutely crucial to trying to understand how we can be more sustainable, and it's absolutely crucial to this project that we've just been investigating fairly loosely over the last 6 months. So how many people here have heard of the Anthropocene? Okay, there you go. A whole heap more than in most audiences, I would think. For us, it's trying to work with this idea, okay, that we are apparently in a new era where humans are dominating the planet, are running the planet. What does that mean for organisations, for society? And because we work in a business school, what does it mean for business? But we're also trying to broaden it out more collaboratively. What does it mean for the professions in general? So how do we transition to what we call this era, the Anthropocene, which is different to the Holocene, and I'll go through a few reasons why. What does it mean for us as a community? I have to mention that it's not a funded project so far. We, of course, are also going to be looking for funding. Currently, all the work we do on this project is voluntary, if you like, so we do it sort of after hours. And it's being led by Ken McLeod, who's totally voluntary. He's a research associate who's absolutely committed to this idea, and we're presuming that we are going to be gathering interest from across a number of different professional bodies. We've already been talking to the lawyers, so they obviously can see something in this concept of the Anthropocene for them. We're also going to be talking to some of the designers and engineering professional groups as well. So the emphasis is on action, learning, collaborative inquiry, and what does the concept of the Anthropocene mean for different professional and social groups. So, as I've said, the Anthropocene really is a concept that's come through the sciences, largely through the environmental sciences, geological sciences, and the argument is that human beings are now dominating the planet, that human activity is what is running the show. And that has huge implications for how we act. So we have a responsibility, therefore, because we run the show, to try to make sure that those key elements of sustainability, such as equity, intergenerational and intra-generational equity, are achieved, given the current situation of the planet. Now, the work for the Anthropocene, on the Anthropocene, is sort of supported with a parallel project that many of you may have heard of, that's come out of the work of the Stockholm Resilience Institute. So that's a cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, long-term project. A number of very well-known scientists from different areas have been working on it. And what they quite clearly established, that the safe operating conditions for humanity that the planet represents have been breached in 3 key areas. And that's biodiversity, the nitrogen cycle, the extra deposition of nitrogen in the oceans, for example, and of course climate change. And there's a number of other biophysical conditions that we, if we start breaking across the boundaries and those conditions, well, there is no safety for us as humanity on the planet. So according to this work, and according to the theories of the Anthropocene, we're in a very unstable situation. And we absolutely need to do something about it, because we're moving or have moved into an area of extreme biophysical unpredictability, and that has huge social and economic implications. So, you know, just in the paper yesterday, discussion about the environmental refugees potentially that Australia may have to deal with as a result of climate change, etc. So these are social issues, and as we can all see, there's not much hope of our current political system anyhow moving to address some of these core issues. So it's up to us as a community and in our respective professions to address these issues. So that's the message of our project, and that's our general message within our group of researchers who've been working more generally in sustainability in the business school. I was just saying to Cameron, actually, that we have had an extraordinary dean in the business school, Roy Green, Professor Green, who he created my job. There's no other job at a senior level to do with social enterprise or sustainable enterprise in any other business school in Australia. But Roy has got a very strong public set of accountabilities, if you like. Unfortunately, Roy is going very soon, so I'm hoping that our new dean will also see the responsibility that business and a business school has in trying to address some of these issues. Anyhow, that's sort of by the by, but it's incredibly important to us that the leaders of our university community can recognise some of these issues. Because they're not issues that can be just, I don't mean just, but they're not issues that can be relegated to science, engineering, architecture, design, business. They're issues for all of those areas and all of the professions. And you as designers have to come up with some ways that we can work together, which I know you've been referring to. Anyhow, just quickly moving on. So this is, for those of you who've been reading about the Anthropocene, you will know this, but generally some of the theory in this area rests on some of these sort of data lines that indicate that there are rising levels. That's the number of that's car use, for example. That's level of carbon dioxide. This is the population. This massive increase from about the 1950s is called the Great Acceleration, and it's those conditions that mirror that reflect the concept of the Anthropocene. Now, just because we're thinking of design, I guess one of the core issues underpinning it all is the concept of consumption, and it just is a huge social and political dilemma, which I think very few of us know as yet how to address. And China clearly is very concerned about one aspect of that, and that's waste, and as a result of that has moved into trying to encourage the circular economy. How many people here have done a bit of work or looked at the circular economy? Just about everybody. So certainly it's happening in China, but what's happening in China, just from what I've been reading, is that it's largely been focused on the manufacturing area, and there's been very little understanding, either there or here, of what the circular economy might mean for the social aspect of work. What does it mean for the labour force? What does it mean for small to medium-sized enterprises? What does it mean for worker agreements? What does it mean for communities? Is it a community builder, or is it going to disrupt established communities? So there's been very little academic research in this area, and we're really at a bit of a loss to understand the implications of it more broadly. So yes, it might deal with waste in China, but what does it mean here for us? And indeed, how effective is Australia going to be in establishing a circular economy when we have much less likelihood of being able to group industries together in some sort of industrial symbiosis arrangement? Another one of the dilemmas that I've become very interested in over the years is the dilemma around palm oil. I'm sure most of you will have been reading some of the issues around that. I mean, I think it's a classic example of how we're busily destroying various elements of the planet consciously, in a way, when you think that 50% of the products on supermarket shelves have got palm oil in them, and yet the radical deforestation that's going on in countries like Indonesia and Malaysia is not only destroying sort of habitat, but also because of the various techniques that are used, producing toxic pollution as well. So despite all the campaigns from Greenpeace, despite the formation of the sustainable, the round table for sustainable palm oil over there, only about 10% of products, I think, are certified according to that guideline. So, you know, two dilemmas, and where do we go? What can we do about it? Now, responses so far. The Becaw. How many people have heard of the Becaw? Okay. So do you all know and work for who works for an organisation that's a Becaw? Fantastic. So would anybody like to comment on how effective you think Becaw is in bringing about change? Yeah, well, maybe we can talk about that later. So, to me, one of the things about Becaw, and I don't think I need to explain because so many people seem to know, of course it's a Becaw organisation, it's one that's been accredited or has passed various examination requirements in terms of social and political sort of outcomes or requirements from their business. To me, one of the really key things is that Becaw organisations are supposed to work together. And so there is a network potential. To me, I think that's one of the things that we need somehow to address, to build up these interconnected networks of organisations that are responsive, that are responsible, that are attempting to make this transition to, say, the Anthropocene. So I'm not sure how the Becaw is going in terms of the numbers of its enrolments, but certainly across the globe now there are thousands of Becaw organisations, thousands of these organisations that have signed up to a certain to their set of credentials. So that, and because it theoretically works as a network, that should be a means of affecting change. Look, there's a link there to the Australian Becaw organisations. I won't go through that, and that's just a recent screenshot of it. So one of the key areas, I think, that certainly here at the university, that sort of bringing us together to work towards this sort of future is the reasonably recent development of the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 key Sustainable Development Goals that 193 nations have signed up to. Now, those goals are social, environmental and economic. They're integrated goals. And that's the point of the whole thing. It's not just an environmental problem that we're dealing with in the Anthropocene. It is an integrated problem. As Jex was saying in her talk, it's a systemic issue. And these goals need to be worked through for each profession, for each industry, for each university. We've started on the process here. Most of the other universities in Australia are also working on trying to understand what they mean for our curriculum and for our research. Now, I think that has been an achievement to actually get those developed. 5 minutes, okay. And I won't go through that. But just to say that for design, if you're interested in following this up, or maybe you already know about this, the Oslo Manifesto goes through what design what do these goals mean for the design profession. And these are just the first 4 goals, and so they've sort of written design into the equation. So you can see what a holistic or integrated concepts they are. Now, I won't go through these because these are, I was going to go through the circular economy, but I don't think, so I need to, so many of you seem to be aware of it.
Not everyone.
Not
everyone.
Not everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, anyhow, these slides are going to be available for you. Basically, the circular business model moves from a linear make, use, dump, waste, moves from that to reuse, remanufacturing, recycle. I mean, the lowest level is recycle, then it goes remanufacturing, where you retool the various component parts, then it goes to reuse, where you actually reuse that product. So, you might reuse material that once was a dress, becomes a stuffing for a cushion or whatever, something like that, sort of down the line. So these are different business models. Selling into different markets is a key issue, and of course the product redesign. But this is where, and I'm sure you will all be aware of this, that the problem with product redesign, so you can make it circular, is the obsolescence issue, the planned obsolescence.
Exactly.
Actually, somebody from the ABC rang me today and asked me would I talk about planned obsolescence. And I was saying to Cameron, I couldn't help thinking there's a number of people who say academics are really into sort of that sort of thing because we keep on reinventing our terms and like what was sustainability becomes the Anthropocene or something. But not really. It's a slightly different way. Anyhow, the other new business model is the concept of shared value, and this has been promoted by one of the most famous business professors in the world. That's Michael Porter, and he's promoted this concept that what business should be doing should be, if it's really doing well as a business, it's working for society, but also working for its own economic good. So his argument is that business can be about bettering society and improving the environment. So he has a number of examples, business model examples that he uses to illustrate. Now, that has been incredibly influential. Now, whether it's been so influential because it just improves the reputation, it's just organisations enabling themselves to give themselves a pat on the back. Whether it's that, or whether there is some actuality in this concept that if a business really puts its mind to it, it can actually create social good as well as economic capital. So anyhow, I'm just mentioning it because there's been a lot of critique about it, but maybe there's some righteousness in his approach. Now, just finishing quickly, another aspect of, say, the redesign of business, if you like, is the emergence of new forms of lending. So the idea that organisations such as CIFA have emerged who lend money, or which lend money for social or environmental projects. Now, that's a whole other area of finance, which I won't go into, but some of our people in the business school are into that. Now, something dear to my own heart, which I'm going to finish on because it's about my own house, is that I'm into cohousing, right? So how many people know what cohousing is?
Yeah, no, something.
Right. So I co-house with one of my sons and his family, and there are social and environmental benefits. Of course, there are issues, but it's been fantastic for us, and we've been running a research project through Institute for Sustainable Futures looking at how co-housing might relate to the aged care sector. But it's great for me living next door to my little granddaughter and my little granddog. It's great for them because I do quite a lot of babysitting, right? But it's a very powerful way of saving resources as well. So there are little houses there, 2 little semis in Balmain, and these are our houses now. So I live there and my son lives there, and there's various connecting ways that we can move through those houses. So anyhow, it's an interesting model that...
A room?
There's absolutely no extra room, I can tell you. We're crammed into these little houses.
We're just building me a little extra floor on top.
Anyhow, all right. Okay, sorry, I hope I haven't gone over. But there's a lot more of those slides there. If you want to contact me about anything I've said, please do.